Chapter 7. Hot Potatoes. Doesn't matter who we are. What matters is our plan. I twitched inside my armor, trying desperately hard not to wet myself. We were surrounded on all sides by a moving, raging mass of rotted flesh and cold, lifeless eyes. The undead horde we thought had been secured behind the ice sheet had returned, and now had a hold of Crosshair and Mustang. They were all over us, trying to peel off weapons, armor, and clothing, anything to get to the sweet pony meat below the hard surfaces. 3 of them were trying to yank off my plated armor, and failing miserably at that, their hooves clanging loudly against my shoulders and back. While it was freaking me out that they were this close, the sudden jostling helped to jumpstart my brain back into action. I snap-assessed the situation. This close, and they were putting me in the explosive envelope if I were to use my missile launcher. Instead, I gripped my shotgun and my magic, unclasping the top of the leather holster reassuringly strapped to my chest. It was the only weapon that seemed to survive being around me, and in these close quarters, it would do just as much, if not more damage than a rifle. Once I ran out of ammo, I could use it as a club in tandem with my magi drill. However, before I could pull it out, a green magical aura wrapped around it, keeping it in place. "Elder, you're being awfully quiet. Why don't you go and introduce yourself?" Mustang half-shouted, cheerfully, much to my shock, all the while giving an extremely enthusiastic hoof shake to one of the ghouls. Taking a moment to really look around, I finally realized what I'd been seeing. The ghouls were all talking at once, voices rushed and nearly babbling. They were excited for some reason, but in a happy manner, not the usual bloodthirsty one. They weren't tearing off our clothing and armor, but they had stripped off my front leg armor. Wait, what? An earth pony ghoul had unbolted my leg armor and was shaking his head, frowning as he examined it. "Hey! Give me that back! I need that!" The pony ghoul ignored me, walking off with the piece of dismantled equipment. Another ghoul was trying to pull off the missile launcher from my back, and yet another one was tutting as she pulled out and began to inspect my shotgun.
"Fascinating,"
the ghoul enamored by my missile launcher stated, examining the autoloader.
"A Vulture Griffiths saddlebag. Never thought I'd see one of these babies again."
By this point, I was definitely beginning to grow annoyed. Looking over, I could tell that Crosshair was too. The zebra was standing on his hind legs and using his forehooves to keep the ghouls from touching all of his stuff by holding it all above his head. Mustang, on the other hoof, seemed to be soaking up the attention, and was even striking a pose or two, letting that strange and subtle light out to dazzle the dull eyes of what I was hesitantly sure were a trio of female ghouls.
"You! Are you the simpleton who changed the password?"
"It wasn't exactly difficult. I mean, what kind of idiot makes the password?" I asked, while really trying not to gag.
"It's such an obvious password that no one would ever think to enter it."
Well, I did. So your argument's invalid. Therefore, I'm smarter than you."
"You're luckier, not smarter. Who else would think to make a bullet that shoots confetti?"
"That's not smart. That's just bizarre. Who would want a bullet that shoots confetti?"
"Obviously a ministry mayor would want it. And it's good for the kiddies to practice their shooting with safe rounds."
"Safe rounds?" Stopping to think about it, I had shot Crosshair with one. Yeah, that actually makes sense.
"What?"
I turned to see Crosshair and Mustang giving me concerned looks. The other ghouls in the room had fallen silent.
"Tell that to my one eye, Sprocket,"
a ghoul at the back of the crowd called out.
"That's Dr. Sprocket. We all know we worked out that particular problem in the alpha build."
Leaning in close, he whispered a bit loudly, his breath chilling my exposed legs.
"The beta builds were impact-triggered and deemed too dangerous for the kiddies. The alphas used range-reading magic to self-detonate before actual impact, proven to be safe 100% of the time in all first firings."
"We only did 10 firings before the war."
"And every single one worked exactly as planned,"
Sprocket replied curtly.
"Ministry Mayor Pinkie Pie herself approved these rounds."
Somehow that didn't make me feel any better.
10 test firings from before the war is not a guarantee of safety from a stockpile of millions.
The same ghoul argued back.
No matter how many times Pinkie Pie swore they were safe.
If it helps, we fired 2 more recently and they seemed pretty safe, I added. Sprocket beamed triumphantly at the ghoul in the back.
Ha! In your face, One Eye! I told you they were safe!
Crosshair was looking at me, eyes bulging and hooves trembling in what I presumed was anger. You shot me with unsafe bullets! Crosshair roared, causing the circle of ghouls surrounding him to scatter. Now, Crosshair, I was sure they were safe. Besides, I didn't aim anywhere particularly lethal. You shot at me! Crosshair repeated, stamping one hoof on the ground.
You shot my eye!
One Eye shouted from the back.
Hey, you've got my Pip-Buck technician's key.
A ghoul rummaging through my saddlebag grumbled.
Why are we all fighting?
Mustang bellowed, though not quick enough to stop One Eye and Sprocket from having the most hilarious hoof fight in history. It started with One Eye throwing a slow punch at Sprocket, barely landing it with a dull squelch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then one of the ghouls in the onlooking crowd yelled out something along the lines of, "Geek fight?" And immediately the 2 stallions began to pummel each other. And by pummel, I of course meant that they just slapped at each other with both forehooves, accidentally headbutting every once in a while. While this went on, they would occasionally stagger and almost lose their balance, generally due to one of their own punches actually landing, not the other way around. And at one point I was amazed to see that they had actually started hoof bumping with one leg while hiding their faces with the other, in the most ineffective defensive posture I had probably ever witnessed in my life. Eventually they fell upon the ground, twisting over one another in what I could only describe as one of the most disgustingly wrong ghoul male action with clothes on that I'd ever had the misfortune to stumble across. While I knew intellectually that they probably were trying really hard to hurt one another, the jiggling, rotted flesh, and decidedly unhealthy wheezes and groans really didn't help. Also, the condensation from one another's frostbite-inducing breath beating upon them decidedly gave the air an exotic rendition of post-apocalyptic smut. The hooting and hollering females, and even a few males, wolf whistling them on was really just over the top. "This is just sad," Crosshair said in mild amusement, watching the flailing scientists struggle with one another.
Does this happen often?
Mustang asked one of the 3 ghoul mares clustered around him.
Oh, you better believe it, handsome.
One of the ghoul mares leaned in closer to him.
Dr. Sprocket and Tester One Eye have been fighting about this for almost 200 years now.
All right, you two, break it up, break it up.
A ghoul wearing a flame retardant suit pulled the 2 ponies apart.
All right. Now, how many times we got to go over?
He stopped mid-sentence as One Eye attempted to make another lunge for Sprocket, causing the hoof holding him back to fold the wrong way, making a rather revolting squelching sound accompanied by a dull meaty pop.
Sorry, Tumbleweed.
One Eye tried to apologize, but was smacked on the back of the head by Tumbleweed's still functioning hoof.
Dang it. You know how long it takes me to fix my legs. Now I've got to pull back into place and hope to find some extra Hydra, Skeleglow. That stuff ain't exactly plentiful, you know.
The silence that followed threatened to pass quickly, so I decided maybe now would be a good time to ask some important questions. All right, enough of these shenanigans. Who are you ponies? Well, actually, I'm a griffin. A voice tried to interrupt me. I mean, who are you people? I clarified. Sprocket straightened himself out and adjusted his stained coat before speaking.
We are the original scientists and testers employed by Trotworth Independent Technologies in Stable VII. That's Roman for 7, by the way.
Somehow, I just knew there were going to be parentheses around that last bit. I don't know how, but I swear you could almost hear them.
It got designated that way to avoid mix-ups with the original Stable Tech stables. We're those responsible for the most of the lovely bullets inside.
Sprocket explained.
And some of the cooler balefire eggs,
A stallion called out.
And some of those delightful missiles and rockets that go really fast and blow up extra big.
One of the mares latched onto Mustang's leg added.
Right.
So what exactly do you all want?
Well, we'd like our stable back.
Sprocket stated cheerily. Heads bobbed up and down in agreement with him. We can't just give you the stable back. You ponies have any idea how many times we were nearly killed just claiming it? I mean, one of the Mr. Handies dissolved my brand new Western Equestrian Armaments M1918 assault rifle into a puddle of plasma. The ghouls had the decency to look uncomfortable, shuffling their hooves and trying not to look at me in the eyes.
"Oh, that sucks,"
One of them in the crowd said sympathetically.
"I really like those." "How about we compromise?"
Tumbleweed suggested. All right, we'll give you half. Crosshair stated really charitably. Of nothing. Or not. I do the negotiating around here, Night Crosshair, I said sternly. And first thing on the agenda is giving back my power armor. The ghouls had skillfully stripped down my power armor while I was busy talking with Tumbleweed without noticing. Now a small gaggle of them were poking their muzzles inside the exposed innards and jabbing at random things with sharp instruments.
"Oh, sorry, we can't do that yet."
A ghoul levitating a small blowtorch responded. With a small spark and a hiss, it led up menacingly close to my side. Dropping a welding mask on, his voice came out a little muffled.
"The servos in small matrices are just a mess. And what did you do to the talismans? They look like something stomped on them."
The damage was caused by one of the robots, specifically a giant four-legged monstrosity that was much too big for the stable, I retorted. The ghouls not clinging to Mustang or working on my armor grimaced.
Yeah. We remember that, robot. No idea why stable tech or Trowers were thinking when they put that abomination inside the stable,
Sprocket said darkly.
I believe it was supposed to be a deterrent to bullet theft. We only ever kept that thing in the bullet storage level,
The Griffin Ghoul added helpfully.
Well, it certainly won't be stomping on me. I mean, any pony anymore. I took care of it.
The ghouls let out a collective sigh of relief. Some even smiled, their decaying faces giving me quite a bit more nightmare fuel than I really wanted. To be fair, Mustang did do most of the work. Crosshair had to add, oh so helpfully.
"I do not like to brag, but it was truly a battle that should go down in history,"
Mustang said in a humble voice.
"The great metal beast fell upon us, crashing through the steel roof like wet tissue paper."
Mustang dramatized the motion, jumping surprisingly high and landing with a loud slam.
"My elder bravely distracted the terrible machine while Night Crosshair kept its ranged weapons busy."
Mustang accurately mimed Crosshair's firing technique, though he wasn't able to maintain his balance for long. As he came down, he swept his minigun back up. As he was telling the story, his voice had slowly gained volume, so much so that he nearly bellowed the last bit while affectionately holding the minigun in the air with his magic.
"When Elder Inkwell had to resort to most daring hoof-to-hoof combat with the beast, I saw my chance. While it was disoriented, I sprinted to the floor above and leapt onto the robotic menace's chassis, where I unleashed the full wrath of Hailstorm."
Posing heroically, he activated the barrel motor for a short moment with a mechanical whine. Vague, barely audible choir-esque notes heralded the giant light that seemed to come from everywhere but nowhere, all at once. Small sparkles shimmered along his well-groomed coat, and a nice sheen of light gently flashed along any polished metal he was wearing. Muscles rippled under his flesh, undulating in yet another flavor of extreme male that was the sentient being of Mustang. The three mares that had been waiting to get back near to him immediately dove forwards, striking various poses on and around him that could have come straight from a comic book. One even splayed out near his front legs, one forehoof wrapped around his own, swooning heavily. Next to me, Crosshair smacked his hoof to his face so fast I was surprised there wasn't a sonic boom. "And now I'll never be able to read sword mares the same way again," he said, somehow voicing my exact thoughts. I've never seen anything this wrong in my life.
Can we borrow him for an hour?
One of the ghouls, still clinging to Mustang, asked. There was a brief bit of whispering between the mares before she amended.
Make that 2?
I stand corrected, Crosshair said, his face somehow turning a bit paler.
Well, I don't know if...
I started, but was interrupted.
Excellent. Come with me, ladies,
Mustang said in what I can only describe as the most gentle stallionly tone I'd ever heard as he escorted the rotted mares away.
But, Mustang, we're supposed to head out to the mines.
Mustang was too engrossed with seducing and being seduced to listen to me as he trotted off.
Pardon me, but did you just say you were going to the mines?
Tumbleweed asked, disbelief written on his face.
Yeah, we are,
I responded absently, desperately trying not to think what the 4 of them were going to be getting up to in the near future.
Is there a problem?
Dr. Sprocket cleared his throat, sound much like a bag of marbles jingling, with some meat thrown into the mix.
It's not so much that it's a bad idea, per se. More like a terribly stupid one. During the war, the local mining companies employed diamond dogs native to the far north. They lived and worked in those tunnels.
I sighed mentally, not liking where this was going one bit.
So you're saying that the diamond dogs...
After the end, they stayed in those tunnels. Now we have snow hounds. It stands to reason that that's where they make their dens.
Great. The only source of power armor parts, and they had to be in a den full of snowhounds. Actually, I doubt it's snowhounds, Crosshair stated. You see, snowhounds don't take time to lay their traps or put warning signs. We are probably dealing with an organized group that are particularly cautious and territorial. I found myself suddenly hoping that it wasn't those cock-noodling Enclave bastards. That was the last thing I needed. Heavily armed and armored ponies with an entire nation most likely willing to send more reinforcements to one of their last mines. After a short moment of internal worrying, I nodded to Crosshair.
Thank you, but I believe we're all getting off topic.
I paused a moment to look around at the other ghouls and to make sure none of them would interrupt me.
I think we need to work out some kind of arrangement. How about we go to my office?
I tried to lead the way, but my power armor was proving to be remarkably heavy and cumbersome. I, in fact, couldn't even move. It appeared one of the ghouls had induced a frozen state in my armature of my suit's joints, preventing potential complications. Sighing heavily, I resigned myself to wait for the scientists to get done.
That is, we'll go as soon as some pony gets me out of this armor.
I sat in the fox leather-bound chair of the overstallion. Reaching out to rub the polished wooden surface, I wanted to think it was my desk, in my stable. But I knew, even though taking it hadn't been relatively easy, maintaining a stable, even one this small, would take a very large number of ponies. I'd need a small army of relatively sane Wintertrot ghouls to help me maintain it. I'd need them to test bullets, fix weapons and armor, repair stable systems when they became worn, and replace them when they broke. I'd need them to be a unified, well-oiled machine, and I didn't even know how to take the last mintiles I owned to connect the dots. Of course, I had still taken it anyways, mostly because for something this important, I needed every edge I could get to keep all parties satisfied. That, and it hid their awful smell with a minty fresh veneer. Taking a deep breath of the slowly recirculated air, I caught a full-on whiff of dead, rotting flesh. I tried not to gag. Opening my eyes, I surveyed those before me. Sprocket and Tumbleweed were standing on the other side of the desk in between us, with a select few others next or beside them. It seemed evident in our previous conversations that they were the ghoul herde's appointed leadership and top staff. Before I could say anything, however, I was cut off by a smooth, lilting voice.
I'm surprised this stable isn't flooded with radiation.
Beaker, the griffin, the one who'd interrupted me earlier, was examining the room with a Geiger counter. I hadn't known what to think of him when I got a good look. He wasn't like the other ghouls. He was in too perfect condition. All his feathers and fur remained. There were no flaps of hanging skin or missing bits either. In fact, if he didn't occasionally let out a super chilled puff of air with every slow breath he took, I probably wouldn't even have known he was a ghoul at all. Completely ignoring my contemplative silence, he continued on rambling. Just look at these soldering lines. Absolutely reprehensible. I mean, I had forgotten Trotworths had cut so many corners, but now I'm surprised they even bothered with radiation shielding. You can examine the stable later, I assured the Griffin as he scribbled down some notes on a small pad of paper strapped to his arm. All right, first thing I need to know is what you guys plan on doing to this stable. Jumping forwards, Sprocket launched into a near explosion of animation for one so damaged.
What do we plan to do? That's easy. We plan to do science,
He declared very loudly, raising both of his forehooves and somehow remaining upright. The other ghouls in the room all raised their heads a bit straighter, some even adjusting 200-year-old attire. For some reason, their enthusiasm was extremely invigorating, and I had to suppress my own urge to jump up right then and there and just do something. Anything that was, well, science-y.
He means that we all want to go back to making experimental bullets and stuff like that.
Tumbleweed explained a moment later.
It's not exactly easy to make more exotic munitions without the facilities of the stable. We were reduced to making small caliber armor-piercing rounds.
The three ghouls shuddered simultaneously. What's wrong with armor-piercing rounds? I asked, raising an eyebrow. They're incredibly useful against robots and most armored targets. The ghouls gave me a disbelieving look. Sprocket grit his teeth in anger so hard a black molar popped out of one of his cheek holes. Levitating it back with a squish, he locked his cold, hard, dead eyes with mine.
Armor-piercing rounds are simple. Simple! They're just boring to work on. You have any idea how dull it's been for us?
Sprocket started pacing back and forth as he continued to rant.
I mean, you can't just sit idle for 2 centuries. You've got to keep yourself occupied. You have no idea how excited we were when we could finally make a nice explosive round. Most of us literally wept tears of joy. Some for days, even. And, of course, we used it to kill a cluster of raiders trying to loot our home.
There was a brief pause as the group shared a nostalgic moment of silence, small hums of appreciation gurgling out frighteningly. I coughed politely when the eventual silence began to stretch out a bit uncomfortably. I can understand what you mean, I said, trying to sound as sympathetic as I could. I used to get terribly bored just tinkering and repairing equipment, back when I was just an initiate. I never got to try and improve the Gatling lasers or build the experimental weapons from blueprints we recovered.
Ah, good. You understand, then. You have the heart of a tinkerer, I can tell. That shotgun didn't repair itself, did it? No cheating here.
He placed his front hooves on the end of the desk.
So, can we have our stable back then?
He asked, whilst I assumed he attempted to give me puppy dog eyes. Due to his physical state, it wasn't a surprise that he failed miserably. All right, here's my proposal. I placed both my forehooves back on the desk, then clasped them together before me. You get to live and work in the stable again. Now for the Steel Rangers. We'll bring you food, medicine, and amenities. We'll also provide weapons and technology to examine and fix from around Wintertrot as it becomes available. Now, you'll need to follow some small, minor protocols to help function as an effective unit. Firearms training will be mandatory for any that aren't yet skilled in at least basic self-defense, especially those who are going out on excursions. In the long run, though, all you'll really need to do is keep the stable running and see about categorizing the bullets on the bottom floor. It's kind of a confusing mess right now. A wonderful, heavy, pointy mess of destruction. Oh, but a mess nonetheless.
What?
Beaker screeched loudly enough to make all of us wince. Do you have any idea how long it took us to sort all of those bullets in the first place? Which one of you messed up the bullet vault? The Griffin was uncomfortably close to me, leaning over my desk. It was like that when we got here. It was probably the rogue robots that made it, I explained to the ice-cold Griffin. Beaker huffed in annoyance, retracting his talons from the desk.
I suppose mate needs to get stuck sorting out that mess.
Tumbleweed asked Sprocket.
Well, the researchers would love to help, but science waits for no pony.
Sprocket stated boldly, garnering disapproving looks from the other two lead ghouls.
The maintenance team in testers are not wasting time sifting through and sorting piles of bullets. The researchers designed them. They know how to categorize them best.
Tumbleweed stated bluntly, but patiently.
But the researchers need to do science. You know what happens when we don't do some kind of experiment. Remember when old Doc Agon spent too much time looking after animals instead of doing research?
The ghouls shuddered again, this time in revulsion. So what did this Dr. Agon do? I asked, genuinely curious. Tumbleweed and Beaker both gave pained looks, while the others behind them made various gestures of warning. A few just face-hoofed. Suddenly, Sprocket flailed towards the desk and began working himself up again.
He did the worst thing a scientist can do. He went native.
Sprocket shouted angrily.
We worked together for years, invented whole new sciences. And one little apocalypse later, he decides to abandon our research and go live with normal ponies.
Sprocket was pacing again, probably this time out of habit.
I mean, what kind of help did he think his expertise could provide to the wasteland anyway? His specialty was combustion weapons and animal cybernetics. Sure, Ministry Mayor Fluttershy wasn't too happy about him trying to put animal brains on guns, but he was practicing real science. Last we heard, he found some small town and was teaching ponies veterinary practices. Here, in Wintertrot.
For a moment, I tried to think of how that might be applicable to the extremely hostile environment I had recently been calling home. At best, all I could think of was maybe some medical expertise that paralleled medical surgery, but it seemed a bit unbelievable. Maybe he was making cybernetics? Might actually be worth contacting him, now that I thought of it. Okay, so we don't want the researchers getting antsy? Can't we compromise? I asked, glancing at the three ghouls hopefully. It would be so much simpler if you both agreed to a rota, Beaker commented diplomatically. Some of the researchers and maintenance teams work together to sift through and sort the bullets. That way, it gets done. But everyone can have some fun in the workshops as well.
That seems fair,
Tumbleweed said, nodding to himself.
So long as we don't spend too long in there, we should be fine. Might even get a good few scientists to look at some of our more successful creations.
Sprocket stated, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. Okay then, now that that's settled, how about we go and announce the good news? I asked the ghouls. I moved to stand up, accidentally hitting the keyboard on the terminal. The desk shuddered, launching me almost all the way into the air, the large autoguns popping out from under the desk. Cock noodles! I screamed in terror, about to witness the death of innocent ghouls who promised to be better than any team of scribes a Steel Ranger contingent could muster. When they weren't immediately blasted away, I poked my gaze over my quivering hooves to glance at the terminal in confusion.
No threats detected. Please deactivate or reset OS def protocols.
I'm actually surprised that thing still works, Beaker stated, getting close and examining the raised platform beneath the desk. Before long, the rest of the group of ghouls were poking at things under the rim.
I thought these got discontinued or scrapped after that one overmare accidentally killed a stable tech maintenance team, a ghoul asked aloud.
Probably another bright idea from the executives at Trotworth. They were going to put one of their nephews in charge of this stable, if I remember correctly.
Which one?
Doesn't matter. They were all so dumb it would have given us headaches trying to figure out their means of communication.
Dark chuckles washed through the group, doing nothing to help with my tension. Can everyone just, stand back, please? I asked from over the rim. I kind of want to get down. You all can poke about and look at it when I leave. The ghouls politely, and in some cases reluctantly, stepped back as I shut down the OS-DEF. The desk shuddered ominously as it tried to lower. With a metal shriek, it collapsed on one side, throwing me loose. Fortunately, I landed on something soft, that something being Tumbleweed. The desk collapsed and half sank into the floor, before finally combusting as electrical circuits fried and sparked dangerously. I stared in horror as the fire suppression system kicked in, blasting the ruined desk with chemical foam. Why couldn't I ever have nice things?
See, I told him putting dual guns would be structurally unsafe.
One-Eye declared triumphantly, while several of the other ghouls groaned or face-hoofed.
Don't worry, young elder. We can rebuild it. With science!
Sprocket declared, striking a dramatic pose.
But first we need to let the maintenance teams do some structural repairs. Every pony, please evacuate. Remember, take the stairs.
A hidden floor panel popped open after being struck, exposing a tunnel at the end of a set of stairs. Why wasn't this on the map? I asked, as we all began marching in pairs down the dark stairway.
It's a secret tunnel. Only the Overstallion was supposed to know about it. But obviously the maintenance ponies knew too. They did build it after all.
Tumbleweed explained helpfully. We trotted through the tunnel, which became illuminated by a series of dim orange lights, not all of which were turned on. We eventually arrived at the stable door, the entrance to the hidden tunnel cleverly hidden under a floor panel. We emerged to find Crosshair sitting by the stable door, simply watching us in mild amusement. So, which one of you broke the elevator? To be continued.